Today's video, we're going to be speaking with Emmanuel, who is currently a recruiter, a technical recruiter, or a recruiter at Flutterwave. He's going to be talking to us about just general tips that will be useful for people who are looking to get jobs in tech or just who are job searching generally, right? So, hi, Emmanuel. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, Rhoda. First, thanks a lot for having me. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful about that. Grateful for that, rather. I am a technical recruiter for the wave, like you mentioned. So, what that essentially entails is that I hire software engineers primarily for our engineering teams across the various locations that we currently operate in, or any location that we're looking to. Pivot into. So currently, I do EMEA, that's Europe, Middle East, Africa, NORAM, Northern America, and APAC is Asian Pacific region. So those are the regions that I cover currently.
All right, that seems like a lot, but I'm sure you're
Yeah,
capable of managing
it
all
is, but
those.
it's interesting too. It is a lot.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the first question I have for you is, how do recruiters use LinkedIn, GitHub, and Boolean search to source for candidates? I think that's first the question. Then the second question, riding off on that, is how can candidates then position themselves to be discovered across these platforms?
Okay, awesome, great. The first question: how do we use those sites to source candidates? So first, I must say that recruitment is all about strategy, right? So we don't just go into sourcing because there's an open role. Sometimes you fill the open role using a current employee at the organization who will just change departments to fill the open role, right? Sometimes you use referrals, you just make use of referrals from probably the hiring team to fill the open role. So it's not every time we source, but when we have to source, like you mentioned, there are some platforms that we use, like you mentioned, GitHub, Stack Overflow, Behance, sometimes for designers, right? So I think the first thing that I would like to also mention is we don't just source from those platforms randomly. We identify the platform that works for whatever role that we are hiring for. So, for instance, I'm looking for a designer. I'm looking for a designer on Stack Overflow, for instance, right? To be, for instance, Behance that I'll be using, right? So, that's and that's. I think I should mention that employees or candidates or job seekers should know the right platforms for them to join. I think that's a good place to mention that, right? So, if you are a technical writer, for instance, you might not necessarily have to be on Stack Overflow, for instance, right? So know the right community to be on. But I think generally everyone should be on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is like the general site that recruiters source from, right? So how do we go about sourcing? There are a lot of things around that, but within the context of what we're talking about, we source essentially using keywords, right? So there are operators we use in sourcing, which is not necessary for this conversation. But what I think is necessary for this conversation is keywords, right? So we make use of keywords that are from the JD. So for instance, I'm hiring for a a product manager, for instance, and I need someone who has worked in the fintech space. I need someone who has used or who currently uses Asana, for instance, for their work. Those are keywords that I'll put in my search when I'm running a Boolean search or creating a Boolean string, right? So I'll put those keywords, Asana, fintech, or health tech, whatever keyword I've been, or for instance, the location as well. If I'm hiring from Egypt, for instance, I put that as well as a keyword, right? So I said that to say that candidates should make sure that their profiles online are well optimized with those keywords, right? You don't just have your LinkedIn page that's just blank. You just put where you currently work, the date you started and when you ended, or or if it's a present role, you just put present. That's not what LinkedIn, that's not how your LinkedIn profile is meant to look like. It should be well optimized with those keywords, such that when a recruiter is running a search, your profile is one of those profiles that will come as early as possible, right? And then they would also see that you have the necessary requirements that they are looking out for. So that's for the context that we're talking about. That's in a nutshell what sourcing looks like for a recruiter. And you asked the second question. Can you please remind me?
Okay, so like how can candidates position themselves to be more visible or to be discovered on those platforms?
Okay, yeah, I touched that when I was talking about keywords. Apart from keywords, what else? I think, not I think, I know that being active on those platforms as well help. So I typically say when I'm talking about any topic that is related to this, that there's a difference between online profile and then online presence, and you need both. Online profile is how your Stack Overflow profile looks like, or your Behance profile looks like. Online presence is how often you contribute on those platforms, how often you post on LinkedIn, how often you engage other people's posts on LinkedIn, how often you contribute to repos on Stack Overflow, right? On GitHub rather. So that's online presence. So you need both. You need a balance of both. You need a good online profile, and then you need a good online presence. So apart from having your profiles stuck with the necessary keywords, you also have to be um, active on the various platforms that you are on, right? Because the more active you are, the more credible in quotes your profile becomes, right? People will look at your profile, look at what you've done. For instance, the repos that you've contributed in, or the posts you've made, if it's on LinkedIn and all of that, or whatever platform it is. How you check the quality of the content that you put out, and then sort of give some level of credibility to what your profile looks like. So that's the second thing I'll add to having your profile keyword optimized. You should have a good online presence as well, because that helps you, number one, come up when there's a search made, and second, gives some level of credibility to your online profile.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So you said number one, keywords, optimization of keywords on your profile, and number two, you also said that online presence is also very important as well. So as I was saying, some people take it upon themselves to reach out to recruiters when they're job searching, right? So my question is, from your experience, how effective has cold calling or cold messaging been in getting people interviews, and what are the most effective ways for people to kind of say optimize their messages when they're sending a recruiter a cold message?
That's a very good question. Funny enough, I've been looking to put out a post about this on LinkedIn because of one or two things that I've observed. It's just that I've been postponing it because I know the likely repercussion of that, which is so many people now reach out to me after I put out a post about, oh, this is how you should reach out to recruiters. That people will now reach out to me, right? So that's why I've been struggling. But straight to the question, I think the first thing that I would like to say is, sorry, I would like to confirm, is my camera bright enough? Because my screen
Yes, it is.
automatically regulated. Okay, that's fine. Um, the first thing that I would like to mention about that is when you're reaching out to, first, maybe generally, is cold calling, cold emailing or cold messaging. Um, it's fine. It works sometimes, maybe not 100% of the time, because sometimes you send 100 messages and just 18 people respond, and out of those 18, maybe none of them will even tell you that yes, there's an opportunity. But sometimes, yes, it works. So that's, I think I should mention that. um, and then secondly, when you're reaching out via, most times it's cold emailing, right, or LinkedIn messages. When you're reaching out to a prospective recruiter, a prospective employer recruiter via that means, don't just reach out and say, "Hi, Rhoda," and then you expect that Rhoda is going to reply, "Hi, Emmanuel." For goodness sakes, that is not going to happen for 99% of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Rhoda has most probably as 1,000 other people that have sent such messages to her. And Rhoda is not a customer service person that will just sit behind a LinkedIn message and then start replying, oh, I this, I that, good afternoon. So, and it's not because Rhoda is proud, it's just because it's not sustainable. It's not a good use of her time, right? She's most likely a 9 to 5 and she has work she does, right? So don't go that route. If you want to cold message anybody, my advice is I XYZ, I am ABC. Um, I've done this and that. I'm currently looking to change roles. I'll be happy to connect with you if you want me to, or I'll be happy to schedule a call with you if you want me to. Then you attach your resume. I think the 3 or 4 contents or 4 features or characteristics, or I'm looking for lack of a better word, those words in what I've just said right now is 4 things. Number one, introducing yourself. Number two, saying what you currently do or what you've done. Then number three, saying pitching yourself. What are your competitive advantages? So let me be a bit more specific because I like being specific so that people can understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm reaching out to a random, probably an employer or a recruiter, whoever it is I'm reaching out to. I can be like, I, Rhoda, my name is Emmanuel Samuel. I currently work as a technical recruiter at XYZ company. I have recruited several engineering roles like XYZ, being specific, like a full stack engineer, DevOps engineer, quality assurance engineer, etc. across various regions like Europe, Middle East, Asia, etc. I'm currently on the lookout for a change of roles. I'm currently on the lookout for a new role. I'll be happy to schedule a call with you if you want me to do that. Please see my resume attached, and then you put your resume. I think that's pretty cool for you to reach out to a prospective employer recruiter as opposed I Ruda, and then you're expecting Ruda to respond to you, right? So I think that's a good place to stop. A thought came to my mind like a second ago and then completely ran out. Ran out. So if it comes back, I'll mention it. But yeah, I think that's pretty it.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you on this point because I'm not a recruiter, right? But I tend to get a lot of messages because of the nature of the videos I put out on YouTube. So what I find is that more often than not, people just say hi Rhoda or hello Rhoda. And it's like, okay, like, can you just tell me what you need in a paragraph so that way when you see it you can just quickly respond, and that way it just makes sense just for time management and things like that. So that's very effective. That's a very effective way to send a cold message. Just put everything together in a short paragraph and shoot it out. So excellent. So another question that I have, right, is so let's say for example you put out a job ad that you're looking to recruit for a particular role at your company, right? So how can a job seeker separate themselves, or how can a job seeker stand out considering how competitive it is? A few minutes you're seeing 500 applicants already submitted their applications, and also how can you stand out in this competitive job market?
Yeah, that's valid. So this question, there are probably 1,000 things to say. So I'll probably just mention those things you don't pay attention to. First would be let your resume be as specific as possible. We have so many vague resumes out there. And what do I mean by specific? I mean let it speak to the role you're applying for or the roles you're applying for. Let the So, for instance, I think this is a very good example. For instance, we're in your resume, there's a section. Usually, people include this a section for skills, like the skill sets that they have. So, what people do most times is they just go online But what are the common skills for an employee to have, or a professional, a career professional to have? And then they put it communication skill, you know all those skills now. Communication skills, organizational skills, they just put all of them there. But a smart job seeker or a smart candidate, what that person will do is number one, what are the skills that are relevant to the role that I'm applying for, to my career path? And then you just identify those skills. Also, a smart job seeker, especially now that we're talking about, or that we're primarily addressing technical talent, engineers. Um, a smart one, what that person would do is to identify the programming languages, the frameworks that he or she has used before, has worked with before, has worked on before, the software, if it's possibly a product manager that the person has used before, that the person currently uses, so Asana, Trello, Jira, put all of those stuff there. That's what a smart person do. So, to stand out, number one, your CV has to be specific. It doesn't have to be general. It shouldn't be general. Let it be specific. Let it speak to what you're applying for. The duties that you put in there, let it speak to what you're applying for. I advise people that before you apply, just check the job ad, right? It's possible that your CV, let me say this before I say the statement that came to my mind before. Your CV cannot 100% do justice to all your experiences, because there are some experiences that you would have forgotten that you had, and they are very, very nice. I don't mean experience in terms of, oh, I've worked here. I'm talking about experience in terms of what you've done, the actual duties. So it's not everything that you've done that you, in fact, you can't have the space on the CV will not be enough for that. That's number one. So you might have even forgotten that, hey, I actually did this and it's very important to put in my CV. That's one. Two, of course, there's no space in your CV to put all your experiences. Number three could be that you didn't even think that that experience was relevant to even be put in your CV, which sometimes that might not be the case. So check the job advert. What are the requirements? What are the duties? In those things, you might see, man, I've done this. So, for instance, it's a software engineering role. It's a backend engineer role, probably backend Java role. And then in the job ad, you are saying that, oh, this person must have worked in a team that has built an API before. If you have that experience, if you worked in a team of engineers that have built an API before, you should include that in your resume. Most times, I can tell you probably 60% of the resumes you see out there will not have that duties or worked within a team that built an API. Most likely not tell you that. They just check the regular duties that you can see on Google and just put in there. But the job ad is telling you that we need someone who has done this. And you have that experience. You should edit your resume and include that in it. So such that your resume is specific. If it's an ATS that they're using to screen their resumes, your resume will be shortlisted because the ATS is going to, most times ATSs are optimized to pick out keywords. So resumes that have those keywords, they'll be shortlisted or they'll be ranked depending on what ATS it is you are using, right? So that's number one. Then number two, to stand out in job search, I think another thing you want to do is connect. When I talk about connecting, I'm not just talking about connecting with recruiters or HR professionals, because that's what we do most times. Like I mentioned, because this question is quite broad, I'm just going to talking about a few things that we really don't pay attention to. So back to the second point. When I talk about connecting, I'm not just saying connect to recruiters, but everybody does that, or the majority of job seekers do that. But what we don't pay attention to, or the category of people that we don't pay attention to most times when it comes to connecting and networking, is people that are in that professional space that you are in, people that are in the same career path as you are in, right? And the reason it's very, very important to connect with those people is that sometimes, many times, organizations or smart recruiters, let me put it that way, they don't just go, like I mentioned, they don't, when there's an open role, you don't just put out the role, the ad, or start sourcing. Sometimes you could get your role filled as easy and fast as possible by just getting referrals from the team that is hiring. They are the best set of people to do. So, if, for instance, a QA lead is looking for a QA engineer, as a smart recruiter, the first question I'm going to ask the QA lead is, hey, do you have any referrals for this role? Right. And of course, that doesn't mean that I'll just pass the person. The person going to follow the recruitment process thoroughly, right? But that will help me instead of me putting out the job ad, now sitting behind my screen checking resumes, checking the resume of an accountant or a biology teacher who applied for QA role. I won't have to go through all that stress. I'll just check the referrals that that person are giving me. But most times when I ask those questions, because I do, they will tell me no. I don't have anybody. I don't have a referral. And that's because people that are in that career space, they don't reach out to them most times. They're, oh, I'd like to connect with you, or I'm open on the job market. If you have any opening in your organization, please feel free to refer me, blah, blah, blah. So that's another thing that job seekers can do to stand out. Connect with not just the recruiters and HR professionals, connect with people that are in the same career path as you are. The last thing on this that I would like to mention, okay, yeah, I think I should mention this finally, is don't just sit on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever platform you get jobs on and just wait for job alerts or jobs to come to your screen. Another thing you can do is check career pages. Most organizations have career pages. Yes, not every one of them, not every organization has their career page optimized or updated, but a good number of organizations have their career pages optimized. Not every one of them post on LinkedIn or on Twitter or whatever platform about the openings. You rarely see a shell opening on LinkedIn, for instance, right? Most times they just put it in their career page, right? So don't just wait on Twitter or whatever platform. Go check their career pages, right? Because you just might not know the role that you're looking at for might just be sitting pretty in their career page, and if you don't check it, you won't know about it. So I think that's the third point that I'd like to mention.
Yeah. Just to comment on your last point, actually, that's very, very important because I remember my first internship. At the time, I was looking for an internship. I was just done with university, and I remember what I did then. I think I tweeted that I was looking for an internship or something. Then someone who works at a bank just sent me the link to apply, and there was an internship just sitting pretty, as you said, on their career page, and it wasn't on their LinkedIn. I didn't see it on any job alerts. It was just there on the website, and that was how I applied, and I went through that recruitment process, and then I got that internship. Right. So if I did not know that, or if that recruiter, for example, had not sent me the company's career page, I would not have known that there was a job opening or there was an
Definitely.
internship opportunity somewhere. So yeah, that is an hidden gem right there. Right. So moving on to my next question, right? So I want to ask you that how important is a cultural fit for job openings? Because I know that abroad people pay attention to cultural fit when they are looking to recruit for roles, but I don't know how much of an emphasis that we place on it here in this part of the world. So how important is that one, and how can candidates then demonstrate that they are the best, say, cultural fit or cultural alignment for a particular organization?
Awesome, awesome. That's a good question. First, I won't be able to answer if organizations in this climb pay attention to that because I just have limited experience um, in terms of what organizations do with their recruitment process. But speaking of my organization, culture fit is a must. In fact, it's one of the steps in our recruitment process. And if you don't pass that step, you won't be hired. It's as important as that, right? And probably because my organization is positioned as a global organization, right? Because of course we hire across various regions in the world, maybe, but I don't think that's the reason. I want to believe that organizations around the world, even in developing countries, are paying attention to culture fit, right? So it's 100% important to answer your first question. The second question, how employees can position themselves to show that their culture fit is number one, you make your research about the organization, right? Because the culture of an organization ideally should be tied to the core values, right? So the core values of an organization is what determines or drives the culture that thrives in that organization, right? So find out what the core values of the organization you're applying to are, and then begin to screen yourself against those core values, and then think about the experiences, sorry, excuse me, previous experiences where you've displayed those core values. So, for instance, one of the core values of the organization you're applying to is integrity. What are those experiences you had? What are those instances you had before now where you displayed that core value, right? So, think about those things because sometimes what organizations do, or smart organizations, smart recruiters do, is they don't ask you, oh, are you a person of integrity? They don't ask you that. They will ask you, tell us about a time where you had difficult choice of, saying for instance, taking credit for a co-worker's work, and how did you handle it? That's what a smart recruiter is going to ask you. So it won't be easy for you to lie, to say yes or no, right? So you have to talk about it if you have that experience or not, right? So that's why I mentioned that you have to really think, screen yourself in comparison with the core values of the organization that you're applying to, and then think of times where you have displayed those core values such that when you're asked, you can, even if you are not even asked to be told to tell the interviewers about the time where you display this coverage, you can even mention it such that it gives some level of credibility to whatever response that you're giving to their question. So that's one key way to position yourself as a culture fit. But I think above all, actually be intentional about living the core values that are necessary to be expressed by an employee, right? Don't wait until when you want to apply for roles. Right? Actually live out those core values. We know these things, right? Typically integrity, um,
Excellent.
professionalism, excellence. So those are the typical core values, right? That organizations hold in esteem. So be someone who actually lives out those things, such that when you get an impromptu interview invite, for instance, you won't really need to think too much. Or sometimes, like some people do, you won't need to lie about those experiences. So I think, yeah, core values super culture fit super important.
All right. So, moving on to my final questions now. I'd like you to just give us general tips that job seekers can, would I say, hold on to now when they are interviewing for job roles. Just interview tips.
Interview tips. Um, hmm, okay. I think the most common one you catch me saying is um, be treat interviews as a conversation, or treat interviews as conversations, not as interrogations. Uh, they essentially want to know whether you fit what they're looking for or looking out for, and you also at the other end, you are observing to see if the organization fits what you're looking for as well, in terms of compensation, in terms of culture, if you can identify that, and then some other things, right? So treat it as a conversation. Um, yeah, that's the first thing. So that helps you to be calm, that helps you to be confident. Yeah, that's number one. Then, and of course, when you know that the worst response you can get from an interview is no, not go to jail, or man, that question that you responded to is so wrong. We need to arrest you. Nobody's going to tell you that. The highest they will tell you is no.
Mm-hmm.
So just relax and face interviews as a conversation. That's number one. Number two, be as specific with real life examples as possible. Play around your strengths. Don't go too much around things you're not strong at. There's nobody that is going to, or I don't want to say there's nobody, but it's it's very, very rare to see a candidate that is going to meet 100% with the requirements in the job ad. So you don't want to play towards your weaknesses. You want to play around your strengths. So when you're introducing yourself, introduce yourself and talk about areas that you're strong at. Such as when they want to ask questions. Most times when interviewers ask questions, they ask questions as a follow-up to your introduction about yourself. So when you've played around your strengths and they're asking follow-up questions, they'll also be asking follow-up questions around those strengths that you've mentioned. So play around your strengths a lot. Um, and then integrity too. If you can't do a thing, if so, I've been in an interview before, and then they asked me how strong I was with Excel. In fact, my current role actually, I was asked how strong I was with Excel, and I was like, I'm not a 10/10. I was intermediate. I told them that I wasn't a 10/10. I was intermediate. And then she was like, okay, that's fine. She even liked how I was open with my response. I didn't try to fake what I wasn't. Right. So be someone of integrity, right, when you are responding to questions. So I think I'll just stop there for now.
All right. So thank you very much, Manuel, for your time. You've shared a
You're
lot of
welcome.
valuable tips that I think would be useful for people who are currently looking for jobs. Right. So for people who are interested in following you online, can you tell us where to find you on LinkedIn or any other platforms where you share your tips and your recruitment nuggets like that?
Okay, because social media is a very, 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 very funny space. I'm often limited to LinkedIn for activity. I have Instagram profile. I have an Instagram profile. I have a Twitter profile, but I'm not so active on those platforms. Especially Twitter. Twitter is Twitter is something else. It's a madhouse. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm more active on LinkedIn, like I mentioned, so you can look out for me, Emmanuel Samuel. Um, Technical recruiter, of course. I think there won't be more than probably two, three profiles that will meet to those two requirements. Emmanuel Samuel, technical recruiter. So at least the first three profiles or five profiles you should that meet to those requirements. I should be one of them. Yeah, so that's it. But I think I should drop this as a final word, in case I don't get the opportunity to. In the world of job seeking, please and please and please, I think one, I'll call it a skill. Not everyone will agree it's a skill, but one skill that I typically advise job seekers to hold on to is patience. It's not a typical skill, I know, but it's very, very important. It's very, very important. You need to be patient because you attended a master class on jobs on how to attend interviews, blah blah blah, doesn't mean that your next interview you would perform 100% and then you get the job. Doesn't happen 70-80% of the time. So you have to be patient, right? Um, for a couple of weeks now, I've been putting out posts that's basically encouraging people because I think a good number of people out there are putting in the right efforts, right? But I'm not just getting results. And that's just because, number one, of competition. Number two, the time is not yet uh, right for them for whatever reason. So, and that's where patience comes in, right? Because sometimes the reason you are getting results is not because you are not doing the right thing. They say it's only a madman that would keep doing the same thing and expect different results. That doesn't happen across all contexts, right? That sometimes that what you are doing is what you have to be doing until the time in quote of harvest comes, and then you see the result of what you're looking for, right? So please be patient, and definitely at the end of the day you strike gold.
Awesome. Thank you very much again, Emmanuel.